Well, hello then, I do hope you're all well. Well, yes, it's that time of the week again. It's James O'Brien and Theo Usherwood's PMQs post-mortem, where they go through the nitty-gritty of what was said in Prime Minister's Question Time. And this one was a little bit different because after it was the Chancellor's spring statement. Now, before PMQs, did they get it right which way Keir Starmer was going to go? Well, what do you think?
So, I mean, it was interesting. He certainly... here's the thing, Theo Usherwood. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC as we pick over the bones of PMQs with the added tension, the added dramatic tension of waiting for Rishi Sunak to get to his feet and start his spring statement, at which point we will return immediately and live to the House of Commons. So... they guessed that Starmer was going to go in on P&O, which we both managed to fail signally to do. And Johnson had a kind of...
he had the answer ready, didn't he?
Had an antidote in his pocket. But we know that with Boris Johnson being able to say something to avoid short-term embarrassment or short-term problems, which you then later completely abandoned. Most recently, I think, second jobs for MPs during the Owen Paterson scandal.
And of course, with his claim, he didn't have to be right, did he?
No.
He just had to say, we're taking legal action.
Yeah.
And that was immediately when he came out. He said it appears that P&O have broken, or the owning company DP...
But you and I know, of course, that the Trade Union and Labour Relations Act 1992, to which he referred, was actually amended by statutory instrument in February of 2018.
By Chris Grelling, who's then Transport Secretary, so that the government didn't have to be notified by a company like P&O that they were going to sack their staff.
They don't need the 45 days notice if the ships upon which these sailors work are foreign registered.
Yes.
That amendment is the only change to the 1992 Act relating specifically to foreign registered ships. And guess what, Theo Usherwood? The ships concerned in last week's sackings are registered in... Are we playing? Are we doing it like the Chuckle Brothers? Is it to me, to you? Are you going to do Cyprus and the Bahamas?
Yeah. So going by that suggestion, it wouldn't be possible for the government to take successful legal action.
P&O's chief executive has already written to Kwasi Kwarteng saying the very clear statutory obligation in the particular circumstances that applied was for each company to notify the competent authority of the state where the vessel is registered, and all relevant vessels are registered outside the UK. Notification was made to the relevant authorities on March 17.
So they wouldn't, on that, of course, they wouldn't necessarily, and they had told the government, and of course, Boris Johnson was asked about whether he knew about it, James, and then he said he didn't know about it until Thursday morning. But we know from that memo that Louise Hay brought out during the opposition debate, she's the Shadow Transport Secretary, that the government was told about it the night before. Yes. And therefore they'd obviously complied with that regulation. And Number 10 was told about it. Boris Johnson there.
It doesn't mean
coming
he might
back
not have read the memo. I mean,
he's saying, I didn't know about it until the next morning.
Yeah.
But then you would have thought that somebody in his office might have said, boss, we're going to
sack this one's going to go off like a Catherine wheel. They're about to sack 800 workers over Zoom or Teams. And of course, the 1996 Employment Act might come to his rescue here. I haven't got that. But it was a maritime lawyer speaking to Sky News about it, who pointed out that it was Chris Grayling's statutory instrument that meant P&O didn't need to tell the government, and that was reported this morning. So again, we find ourselves wondering whether Boris Johnson has made a mistake, whether the maritime lawyer, the person who does this for a living, has made a mistake, or whether Boris Johnson perhaps knew that what he was saying wasn't going to actually stand the test of time. But it doesn't have to stand the test of time, it just has to stand the test of 20 minutes.
And it has to stand the test of the politics of this, which is that we're dealing with potentially workers who, of course, Boris Johnson won that 2019 election off the back of their vote. And now, of course, that they have lost their jobs and they're going to be replaced with foreign workers on as little as £1.80 an hour.
It's unbelievable.
And that's why, Keir Starmer brings it up, because politically, for Labour, it's about saying, this Prime Minister, from Keir Starmer's point of view, and you heard it, he's all mouth and no trousers. He'll talk a good game. This is Keir Starmer's narrative. He'll say that he's on your side. He'll say that he's delivered Brexit. But actually, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of your livelihoods, your jobs, he doesn't actually do anything. He doesn't actually stick up for you, and therefore, Keir Starmer, politically, this event is horrific on a just the plain level of those 800 workers who've now got to go and find new jobs. But politically for Keir Starmer, it's an opportunity to say, well, actually, if you vote Labour, then we will introduce the necessary legislation, namely banning fire and rehire, and the Conservatives won't. And that's why on Monday he brought forward that Opposition Day debate motion, which gave Tory MPs the opportunity
Did
to
it really? Isn't it always a bit disingenuous?
Well, it's not it's not disingenuous in that, Tory MPs could have just voted
why
for
didn't
it.
they then?
Because they'd have to bring forward legislation. It's non-binding, but the assumption would be that if a load of Tory MPs voted for it, you'd expect the government to bring forward legislation banning fire and rehire.
Yeah.
That would be the assumption.
So they don't want to. Or they don't want to give Labour the win. More pertinently, perhaps they will bring forward.
Maybe they will. Maybe they'll leave a bit of space for it, and then they'll bring forward legislation to ban fire and rehire. And that's. But if they were to do that, I mean, this this is something that would obviously play to Labour's narrative. If they don't ban it, then it's going to play to Labour's narrative that, and Keir Starmer's narrative that, the Prime Minister might talk a good game when it comes to sticking up for working Britons, but actually he doesn't necessarily introduce the legislation that means it can happen. And that's why Boris Johnson knew he needed an adequate response. He couldn't just simply go through this PMQs without providing a substantial response to what Keir Starmer was saying that in his view he thought that P&O had broken the law, and therefore he's going to take legal action, or the government was going to take legal action.
I think we'll drop the news and cross live to Rishi Sunak the moment that the Chancellor of the Exchequer gets to his feet with his spring statement. So the kind of flotsam and jetsam of PMQs dispensed with this week in large part. The MPs standing up to ask whether the Prime Minister agrees with my constituents that apple pie is delicious and best served with custard. We won't be. There's a tiny bit of that underway as we speak, but not as much as there usually is.
Well, unfortunately, there was plenty of fluff and nonsense from the backbenchers, with the softball questions. Can I congratulate my Prime Minister on doing sterling work in Ukraine, wrestling Putin to the floor in a figure-4 necklock on his own and giving him Gozook 6 of the best and wah, huzzah, and all that nonsense, and then saying, would my right honourable friend agree with me that apple pie on a wonderful warm spring morning refreshes the parts of the apples cannot reach? Well, yes, of course, and I wish the opposition would come up with fantastic questions like that, and I agree, apple pie on a spring summer morning is absolutely Jaffa. But as I say, when it came to that P&O nonsense, I have a question. Do you think he misspoke? Or do you think he were outright lying? I think, what my thought is, I think he were just telling a whopper just to get through the day. As I say, it's just long enough to get him through PMQs and to hell with the consequences later. So, very, very interesting. What do you guys think? Right, I shall leave the video here, and till the next time I shall bid you farewell and take care.